Be with you. I was born in the United Kingdom. I was raised as a child in the Middle East, and at the age of 17, when I was living in Cyprus, I was listening to a talk given by an Indian who was living in Canada, who'd been listening to an American song when he was a teenager. And as he quoted the words of this song, which was a #1 hit both simultaneously in India and also in the US, he started writing down the words to the song, and as I listened to him recite the words to that song, I also found myself doing exactly the same. And the lyrics, the opening lyrics went something like this: "From the canyons of the mind, we wander on and stumble blind, looking for some kind of clue, a path to lead us to the truth. But who will answer? Is our hope in walnut shells worn round the neck with temple bells, or deep within some cloistered walls where hooded figures pray in shawls, or high upon some dusty shelves, or in the stars, or in ourselves? But who will answer?" And as every verse of that song unfolded, the question came up all the time, not what is the answer, or what is the truth, but to whom could we turn who would be able to give authoritative questions and answers to questions like that, and indeed who might actually have the truth. Now, what's been interesting for me, because I've been interested in philosophy in particular for the past 25 years, is that there's been a very big change when it comes to this whole question about truth. When I was a university student, the prevailing opinion by far was all truth is relative. What's true for you is true for you, what's true for me is true for me, let's all have our own truth and let's be happy together. Now, there was always a problem with someone when they were telling you this, because normally when they were telling you that all truth is relative, they wanted you to agree with them. So they were trying to say to you, look, you think you have the truth, but you need to realize that you've just got your own truth, I've just got my own truth, and we should leave it at that. But when they are telling you that, and they want you to agree with them, they actually want you to believe that that is the case, they're actually offering it to you in an absolute way. They're saying this is the way you should think too, this is the way all enlightened people should think when they think about truth. In which case, it's not just true for you, it's true for everyone. But if it's true for everyone, then it's just true for you. It's not just true for you, because it's true for everybody. And so you have a bit of a problem. But that was very much where the culture was. Now, that was briefly superseded by a moment where, in popular culture at least, the argument was, well, look, there is no such thing as truth. Everybody thinks they've got some truth, everybody is looking for it, but the good news is no one's got any. And the reason why that's good news is that you haven't got a clue what truth is, but even people who think they know what truth is don't know what truth is, and there is no such thing as truth. And therefore that is very, very good news. Now, the trouble with that is that when someone says there is no such thing as truth, they are telling you that they believe it is true that there is no such thing as truth. But if it's true there's no such thing as truth, then what they're saying isn't true, because it is true. But if it's not true there's no such thing as truth, then what they've said is not true. There is no truth, there is no such thing as truth, in which case they said nothing, but in a very complicated way. Which is why one British philosopher by the name of Roger Scruton said, when someone tells you there's no such thing as truth, they are asking you not to believe them, so don't. Now, that was then superseded by more or less where we actually are now, which was a resurgence in the belief of truth. No, there is such a thing as truth. Some things are indeed absolute and can be absolutely known, and especially in the field of science, we now know that there is such a thing as truth, and we also know that anyone who believes in God believes something which isn't true, and they should be told that it isn't true. We shouldn't simply put up with them and say, well, that's nice for you. We should actually point out to the fact that they're deceived and indeed have gone seriously wrong. Now, at the same time, the politeness surrounding this conversation has also evaporated. So again, going back 25 years ago, when I was obviously just 5 years old, people would say things like this to me after my conversion to the Christian faith, after I became a Christian, because I wasn't raised in a Christian home. After I became a Christian, people would look at me and say, Michael, I'm so happy that you believe what you believe. And by that they meant, Michael, I can see that you're genuinely fulfilled as a Christian and you're excited by what you believe. It's obviously brought meaning into your life. And they'll say, I'm happy that you believe what you believe, and I wish I could believe what you believe, but I can't. And I can remember people saying this to me in the Middle East, I remember people saying this to me in Asia, I remember people saying this to me in Europe. And when you hear the same phrase, almost word for word, in almost every country of the world you go in, it causes you to think, well, what does everybody mean by this? Everyone's saying the same thing. And what, by and large, they were saying was, look, Michael, I am happy that you are happy. But the reason why you are happy is because of your faith. Now, faith is believing in things which either A, aren't true, or B, you can't know are true. So, for most people, faith is believing something in the absence of evidence. That's normal faith. Strong faith is believing in something even when you suspect it isn't true, because obviously that requires a bit more faith. And the strongest possible kind of faith you could have is when you know it's not true and you're still able to believe it, because how much faith do you need then? So what people are basically saying is, Michael, what you believe by faith, in the absence of reality. Now, what do you call people who believe in things that are not real? And the answer is mad people, crazy people. So what they're actually saying is, Michael, you are insane. But the main thing is that you are happy and insane. And I am happy that you are happy. And I wish I could believe what you believe, because I'd like to be happy too, but I just can't embrace that insanity to join you. So that's where we're going. Now, the culture has changed on that one, because now people believe that it's actually not okay to be insane and believe these crazy things, because maybe believing these things is bad for society, bad for you, and may lead to people going around blowing up things, in which case it's not good just to say I'm happy for you. You should actually say to people, I'm unhappy for you, and I'm unhappy about what you believe. But this then raises a very interesting question for anyone who is a Christian, and people are often surprised when they find out that I'm a Christian, I'm interested in philosophy, and I think that truth is absolutely essential, because it comes down to this chronic misunderstanding about what faith is. This definition, that faith is believing in something in the absence of evidence, or in the contrary to evidence, is certainly a definition which you will not find anywhere in 2,000 years of Christian thought. So the Bible uses the word faith a lot. There's been 2,000 years of Christian theology and Christian philosophy down through the centuries and down through the millennia. They have written hundreds of thousands of books, and every word of the Bible in every single language is defined, and you'll find dictionary entries and multiple dictionary entries, and you will not find a single one that defines faith in that way. So what has happened has been that people have suddenly thought, well, surely that's what faith is, this is how it's been characterized, it got put up on the internet, people have posted and copied it into various books, and even though some people still insist on saying that this is what Christians believe, and then publish books at great length arguing this is what Christians believe, and have misquoted some very, very famous Christian thinkers in support of this definition of faith, well, all it's told us is that the internet reigns supreme. And I'm a great big lover of libraries, because if you went to the library, you took the book off, you actually looked up the quote and you read it yourself, as opposed to the misquote that is circulated on the internet, that's been cut and pasted into everybody else's book. You'll realise that that person never said anything such thing in the first place. Why? Well, it is because within the Christian faith, faith is not believing what makes you happy, what is convenient, or what you would like to. That is either fantasy, wishful thinking, or just outright deception. Now, wishful thinking, fantasy, is to believe what we will call a phantasm. The Greek word phantasm, where we get the word fantasy from, is something you can only see with the imagination's eye. So if I were to talk to you today about unicorns, we're all capable of closing our eyes and imagining a unicorn. We can see it with the eye of the imagination, but you can't see it with any physical eye, because there are no unicorns. But faith is not fantasy. The word faith, as it is used exclusively in the Bible and within the Christian faith, I can't speak about other faiths, but within the Christian faith, is always as a response to that which is true and real. In other words, we use the word faith in this sense even today. So if I were to say, look, I have faith in you as a group, I'm saying two things. One, you actually exist. So even if I didn't want you to exist, I'm stuck, you're still there. And I think you do not stop existing because I don't want you to exist anymore. As nice as that would be, especially if you're politically minded. In other words, you are there, you are real. And number two, I think you're trustworthy. I can trust what you say. I can rely on it. You're dependable. If you make me a promise, I can trust you. And on that basis, if you are talking to someone who you're convinced is real, they actually exist. So when you're not looking at them, they're still there. Okay? And two, that you can rely on what they say. You talk about putting your faith in them. I have faith in you. It means you're there, and I think you can do what you promised you said you would do. Now this is the sense in which the Bible uses the word faith to talk about God. Faith, the Bible says, is knowing that God is, not hoping that he is, wishing he is, or thinking that he is, but knowing that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who earnestly seek him. You'll find that if you're interested, if you have a book in your room, a Bible in your room, in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6. Okay? Faith is knowing that God is, this, that's a statement of reality, and he rewards those who diligently seek him. That's a question. That's a statement about his truthfulness, his trustworthiness. As a matter of fact, if you read a few verses earlier, you'll find that an even stronger definition of faith is used. Faith is being certain. That means fully persuaded as to things which are not seen, and being totally assured. That root has its words, that has its basis in reality, knowing the complete reality of things hoped for. In other words, even though we may not see God, and even though we are things that we may hope eventually to receive from God that we don't have now, both of those things, one of those words applies to absolute truth. You can be completely convinced about it. It is true. And the other one is totally and utterly real. Make sense? So this isn't sort of like saying, oh, I hope my football team wins next week. Okay, when it talks about the certainty of things hoped for, because you can't guarantee that. Unless, of course, you're Roman Abramovich and you have the Russian mafia behind you, in which case you may be able to guarantee a win, even if you don't deserve one. But outside of that kind of extreme thing, you're basically now engaged in wishful thinking. And the Christian faith, the Christian gospel, is something which claims to be rooted both in reality and also in truth. Now, there's something else about the Christian view of truth which is a little bit disconcerting. And it is this, that it reveals things as they really are. Now, in one sense, all truth is revelatory, which is why, philosophically, well, after Spinoza put a wedge between the category of truth and the category of revelation, it was arguably quite a big philosophical mistake, because all truth is revelatory in nature. Truth reveals things as they actually are. Right? So, if I were to say to you, there's a recording device on this table, if those statements reveal a statement of reality to you as it actually is, that's a true statement. If I were to say to you, there's a recording device on this table, and there isn't, then my statement, which is claiming to reveal things as they are, is revealing things as they aren't. It's a lie. It's either wrong, in which case I'm just mistaken, I'm ignorant, or there's a moral side to it now, which is interesting, because all morality is eventually connected to truth. This is a lie, it's a deception. I'm trying to make you believe something that isn't the case. Now, this revelatory nature of truth is what I think makes a lot of people uncomfortable with it. Aristotle, who lived a long time ago, so you may not have met him recently or read about him in any recent press releases, wrote a lot of famous books, one of which was called The Politics. And about a third of the way through his book on the politics, he says, imagine that you're creating a perfect society. And in this perfect society, someone arrives who is so perfect, they are considered to be a god amongst men. He says, what would the society do with such a person? And Aristotle was very clear. We would have to ostracize them or kill them. Why? Aristotle said. Well, the answer is obvious. A perfect person, if he ever came and dwelt amongst us, would reveal by his very nature all the imperfection around him. In other words, we wouldn't want to be revealed for who we really are. Now, this is, interestingly enough, exactly who Jesus Christ claims to be. He claims not just simply to be a perfect person, but he does actually claim to be God amongst men. Someone without fault. When Jesus stood before a man who was trying him, Jesus looked at him and said, everyone who is on the side of truth believes in me. And the guy interviewing him just simply said, and what is truth? And walked away. Didn't even bother staying for an answer. And if you knew the moral complications that were going on in his life at the time, of the person who was cross-examining Jesus, you would understand. But interestingly, he goes on to say something else. He then turns to the crowd and he says, I find no fault in this person, Jesus. I can't find any error or fault in him at all. Either anything that's deceptive or anything that's morally wrong. Truth has this uncanny way of revealing things as they are, and it can often catch us out. Maybe that's why at times we feel uncomfortable about dealing with something that may be ultimately and absolutely true. It's going to reveal things about us that we may wish and may prefer to keep hidden. And actually, Jesus Christ himself seemed to say this at one point when he was talking to his disciples. And he says, there is a light which shines in the darkness. But people prefer the darkness as opposed to the light. Because if we step into the light, our evil deeds will be made known. In other words, the kind of people we really are will be revealed. It's interesting, most of us go around trying to pretend to other people we're not, to actually make them like us. There's a side in almost every human being which recognizes that if people saw you as you really are, all of the depth and darkness, all the dark side of your character, that they may be put off you. So we try hard to be patient and loving and kind, even when we feel that we should just simply speak our mind. Christian gospel, though, would be very bad news if it was simply true and it simply revealed things as it really was, because what it would reveal would not necessarily be very comforting to any of us. But here's the point on which I wish to end. Jesus Christ, who claimed both to be the truth and to have the truth, and to proclaim the truth and reveal the truth, and offered evidence for what he claimed he was telling us was to be true, also claimed to be able to bring truth to us in a way that would simply not just simply reveal the way things are, but also transform the way things are. Just before I became a Christian, I had been, having been raised in the Middle East, I joined a group where I could ask questions. And I'd been in this sort of group where we met once a week and we read the Bible and we asked difficult questions about the Bible and about the Christian faith in general. I'd been in this group for about 6 months. And we all went away on a camp together. It's a complicated story. I don't want to bore you with all of the details. We were living in a country at the time that wasn't in favour of these kinds of things taking place. I was related to the people who helped rule the country, so I simply picked up the phone and got permission from the government to actually make this particular Christian camp happen, even though I myself wasn't a Christian. They then weren't allowed to use the camping ground, which was under government control, so I then made another phone call through the family, got the government to release control of this campsite so that this Christian group could use it. I then took all my friends along to this camp, including myself, and on the second day of this camp I became a Christian. So I actually organised my own conversion. But what happened at this camp was this realisation to me that I had come to the conclusion after 6 months of asking difficult questions that the Christian faith was true and real, but I didn't want it to be. And not only that, but if it was true and real, if I became a Christian, I would simply become a hypocrite. I would be trying to live a life, a better life, a more moral life, of which I was not capable of living. And all I could think, therefore, was if I become a Christian, because I was fully persuaded that the Christian faith was true and real, all I could think was, if I become a Christian, I'll be trying to pretend I'm something I'm not. I'm going to be pretending I'm a better person than I'm not. And what I had totally failed to factor in with the nature of the Christian gospel, the Christian truth, was it wasn't something that just simply reveals the way things are, it also transforms you as an individual and eventually looks forward to the ultimate transformation of this world with a new heaven and a new earth. In other words, it's not simply a truth that reveals, it's also a truth that changes. And after I became a Christian, I began to become a very different person to the person I was before. And all of my friends noticed it. And this is why the gospel is called good news. Okay? This word gospel, Christian gospel, that word gospel literally means good news. And the reason why it is good news is not just because it reveals truth as it really is, God as it really is, and this world as it really is. But it's good news because it is also able to transform the way things really are. And certainly my hope and prayer will be if you are able to come to events during the course of this week, you begin to find out about how that is possible and the nature of the claim.